This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's November 14th, 2024. On this day in 1971, Intel revolutionized a whole lot of industries by producing the world's first commercially available single-chip microprocessor, the 4004. It was designed out of a commission for a new chip to power a calculator, a classic task to give to a computer, but it ended up essentially opening the door to computerizing all kinds of devices like kitchen appliances. The ads at the time boasted of the chip ushering in a, quote, new era of integrated electronics. And sure enough, before long, consumers were buying microwave ovens that had Intel inside. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. It seems like for the longest time, the story of tech has been how computers keep getting smaller, doing exponentially more in equipment that just keeps shrinking. And that's still very much true on the consumer end. But the latest developments out of Memphis are a reminder that behind the scenes, some of the most cutting-edge computing is done on a very large physical scale with machines that absolutely gobble up power. I'm talking, of course, about Elon Musk's XAI facility in the works in Memphis. The company is working on developing and expanding the capability of artificial intelligence. And as WPLN's Caroline Eggers has reported, that single facility is going to need more power than the city of Franklin. How can that be the case? Well, XAI's computing brain is reportedly made up of 100,000 high-speed GPUs all linked together. Those are graphic processing units, if you don't know the acronym. Computers that can handle math-heavy processes at a really fast speed. And of course, the current pissing match between tech giants is who can link up the most GPUs for their AI development. A couple of weeks ago, Mark Zuckerberg said his company's AI facility had far more computing power than anything he'd seen reported elsewhere. So, of course, now Musk is saying he plans to double the size of the XAI shop in Memphis. And more GPUs means he'll be wanting more and more electricity. It's not just an AI thing. These huge computer farms are really important for data centers and e-commerce, too. And let's be honest, they're necessary just for maintaining everyone's all-consuming digital addictions, which is why a lot of tech firms are now investing in power plants. A few years ago, when Google announced plans to build data centers here and in Alabama, news followed soon after that the company would be building a pair of solar farms deploying a combined 1.6 million solar panels to handle the massive energy draw. So far, there's no sign of Musk following suit. Instead, he's leaning on TVA to provide the power for his GPU chain. In just a few minutes, a conversation with former Nashville mayor and recent congressional candidate Megan Barry. That's coming up after the newscast.
On This is Nashville, we're taking a journey into the identity of this place we call home. The old and the new, the glitzy and the gritty, the monumental and the human. What makes Nashville tick? What makes it unique? And where are we headed as a city? We're going deeper on the day's news, bringing you dynamic conversations and taking you with us out into the community. Join us weekdays at noon. This is Nashville.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. A Fox News host who lives in Middle Tennessee will be the next U.S. Defense Secretary. President-elect Donald Trump has tapped Peter Hegseth of Sumner County for the position. A former Army National Guard officer, Hegseth has advocated for veterans' benefits and opposed women serving in combat roles. During Trump's previous term, Hegseth, who lacks senior military or national security experience, urged the former president to pardon U.S. service members accused of war crimes. The United States has more female veterans than ever, and Tennessee is no exception. Veterans Affairs data estimates the state will be home to 65,000 female veterans by 2040. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney spoke with one during a Veterans Day dental clinic.
Emily McCamey didn't really plan to end up in this dental clinic back home in Nashville.
And say,
She and her family are only in town for a few days. They flew in from the naval station at Guantanamo Bay on a type of medical leave, so Emily's daughter could go see a pediatric specialist.
So while we were back, we were driving past South College. She goes, "Mom, what's South College?" I said, "Well, let's look it up. Let's see what they specialize in." And I saw the Veterans Day event and went, "Hey, wait a minute."
McKamey hasn't been a veteran for long. She just retired from the U.S. Navy Reserve in April and transitioned into a civilian role at the hospital at Guantanamo. She's far from the only female veteran getting her gums checked and x-rays done. One patient gets compliments on her cool pink hair. A few bring in their kids. McKamey says it's not surprising to hear that women are the fastest growing group among America's veterans, according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. The agency states women's participation in VA health services is on the rise, but surveys find that women often don't know how many services are available to them. The federal agency released a report this year on barriers to care for female veterans. Among other things, it found about 50% of patients needed mental health services, and it recommended making them more accessible. It also found that female veterans were more likely than other groups to miss doctor's appointments because they couldn't find childcare. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
CoreCivic, the private prison company that runs 4 facilities in Tennessee, has asked the state for a $6.8 million budget increase next year. The Tennessean reports state lawmakers will likely say yes, even though the Tennessee Department of Correction has fined CoreCivic more than $29 million in the last 2 years over staffing shortages. Federal officials have also investigated CoreCivic facilities for staffing and safety issues. CoreCivic is a major donor to several Tennessee politicians, including Governor Bill Lee. Lee has called the company a very important partner to the state. A major Nashville company is declaring bankruptcy. WellPath provides health care in prisons, jails, and mental health facilities across the United States through a large portfolio of subsidiaries. Last year, it had $2.3 billion in revenue. Locally, it employs about 200 people. A statement from the company says the pandemic drove up many of its costs and that larger economic trends like inflation and high interest rates also damaged their financial position. To reduce its debt, the company plans to sell off its recovery solutions business and reorganize divisions of WellPath Correctional Healthcare. You can't tell the story of Black music and culture without confronting ugly truths about discrimination and racism in our country's history. No one knows that better than the National Museum of African American Music, which is nearing 4 years in its space just off Lower Broadway. But Noelle Taylor, the recent director of education and exhibitions, says the museum still manages to engage people of all backgrounds, even if they don't think they're willing to learn about that piece of history.
I think, again, it's about access points and connections. And so there's something extremely special about music, and it becomes this way to learn about the story without fear.
Taylor was on This Is Nashville yesterday to talk about using history to understand the present moment. Listen to the full episode now at WPLN.org or in the Nash Villager podcast feed. What would minor league baseball look like in Murfreesboro? One group hosts Painting You a Picture will bring that reality closer. Home Run History provided a rendering to News Channel 5 of a stadium on the fringes of Cannonsburg Village. The minor league team's space would connect to Murfreesboro greenways and could be used as a field trip and wedding venue. The plans would seat around 3,500 people with a building cost between $25 and $40 million. First Base is getting it through the Murfreesboro City Council. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. It's been a busy time for former Nashville Mayor Megan Barry. Last week, she concluded her unsuccessful run for Congress in Tennessee's 7th District. This week, Barry released her book, It's What You Do Next. In the memoir, she details her time as the city's first female leader. This includes the death of her son, an extramarital affair, her resignation as mayor, and the rebuilding of her marriage. Barry sat down with WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
I'm honored, Cindy. Thanks for inviting me.
So the book is looking back closely on a 5-year period of your life that involved a lot of heavy topics about your career, family, and grief. You tell the story of it with a lot of honesty and specificity, and I'm curious about what the experience of writing this book and reflecting on this period of your life was like for you.
Well, the book is, as you say, is about the three things that I loved the most. It's about Max, my son. It's about my husband, Bruce, and my job as the mayor of Nashville. And over that course of those 5 years, the tremendous loss of our child and my job, and then the one thing I could save, which was my marriage to Bruce. And so, being in those 5 years, it's a memoir, but it's, you don't have to it's not hey, I was born. It really is. It encapsulates those 5 years of, and those were joyous years and painful years, and I hope that comes through.
At one point, you write how your team tried to tie your affair to the death of your son. But you write that it was more complicated than that. And it struck me how oftentimes in politics and journalism, we want things to be neat, logical stories, even if reality is much more complex. How did you navigate that while working to construct your own narrative?
Sure. So I think one of the things with grief and death, especially death of a child, Max's problem didn't start the day he died. Max had an ongoing issue with substance use disorder, and it was something he was battling. And as parents, we were living through that. So it was, sure, it would have been nice and neat to make the connection that Max's death was somehow connected to my infidelity, but it was way more complicated than that because it's never that clean.
So the release date of your book marks exactly 1 week since Election Day.
Yes, it does.
When you ran unsuccessfully against incumbent Mark Green in District 7. Walk me through the decision of deciding the release. Were there pros and cons to sharing your story before or after Election Day?
One of the things that, again, with books, this book was written a long time ago, and the publishing world takes a long time for things to actually come out. So, this book was actually slotted to come out during the election. And we made a decision that I didn't want the book to step on the election, and I didn't want the election to step on the book. They're very separate things. The book is pretty honest and raw, and I wanted to make sure that there weren't things in the book that could be taken and repackaged in ways that might have been detrimental to the campaign. And I didn't want the campaign to be about the book.
Tell me a little bit about how the last week has been for you.
Well, it's been, now it's time to shift, right? I think my team and we ran a great campaign for Congress. This was it was not meant to be in Tennessee at the moment. There was a national red wave, and there was a lot of things that needed to happen at the local and state level here in Tennessee in order to make our path possible, and they just didn't materialize. So, Tennessee is going to continue to be a state that is a very red state for a pretty long time.
Do you have any thoughts on what a city like Nashville, a blue dot in a red state, should do next?
I think, transit passed in Nashville. So I think that is a great, repudiation that somehow the local voters don't want to vote for their best interests. They do. And transit's a great example that Nashville will be able to take forward and access, hopefully, the federal dollars that are out there so that we can continue to invest in. This will help with housing and all kinds of other components. But, I think we can be proud that Nashvillians passed transit.
I noticed that your book is almost bookended by these mentions of transit.
Yeah.
And last week I was at the watch party, and Mayor Freddie O'Connell really thanked you for really getting this effort.
It was really sweet, yeah.
The ball rolling. The plan that passed is significantly scaled back from the one that you put forth in 2018. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to start somewhere. So clearly the voters in 2018 weren't ready for what was on the table at that time, but they're ready for this now. So that's the positive, and that's the excitement.
So you just completed a big campaign, and now you've put your book into the world. What's next for you?
Oh, gosh. Well, it is what you do next, right? Great question. My hope is that I can spend some good time with the book. One of my passions has been and will continue to be is showing up and discussing the opioid and the overdose crisis. And so I will go out anywhere, anytime, talk to any group so that I can shine light and hope on the story that people are struggling, and I think people don't need to struggle by themselves, and they don't need to struggle in the dark. The shame that comes with substance use disorder is so prevalent. My hope is that my voice can give some hope and sunshine to that.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Cindy, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate you.
That
was WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams with the former mayor of Nashville, Megan Barry. Barry's memoir, It's What You Do Next, is out this week. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who left 5 stars, a review, or a thumbs up in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported, and you can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.